Okay. Hey, everybody. It's our pleasure to welcome our good friend Rabbi Matthew Futterman back to Anshe via Zoom. And it's wonderful to see you, Matt. Um, Enjoying a warmer weather than what we have in Chicago right now, but
Yeah.
not an easy time. I should say that, like many of your friends at Anshe, whenever we hear the word Ashkelon, we think of the Futtermans. So every time I see an alert on my phone, I'm wondering, um, praying for you, your family, and of course everyone around Israel. So thank God you and Khan are safe. But tell us how you guys are doing right now. And where am I finding you? A little bit about your experience since October 7th.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity of sharing as much as we can from the last almost 4 weeks. We came to our daughter's home in Maskeret Batya on October 6th to celebrate Simchat Torah. Uh, Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah were both on Shabbat. Where you guys are, it's spread over 2 days. So Friday night was wonderful. We had hakafot, we sang, we danced, we had a great time with our grandchildren. Our daughter Yael lives in a lovely community. She and her husband, who's a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, are part of a just wonderful synagogue community and small kind of suburban town, and everything was lovely. Shabbat morning at 6:20, our phone started to not just vibrate, but to go off wildly with the red alert app that indicated that a number of places in Israel were under attack from missiles from Gaza. And when it didn't let up, and suddenly the sirens went off here in Maskeret Batya, we ran up to the second floor of our daughter's home where uh, they have a safe room. Safe rooms are reinforced steel and concrete rooms that are supposed to be able to withstand the impact of missiles, even if the rest of the house goes. Here with us were Yael's in-laws and Yael's family, of course. So there were, I guess, 9 of us all together in the house. We all sat in the safe room for about 45 minutes, an hour, as the sirens continued to go off. And then our grandkids saw their parents and their grandparents do something they had never seen before. We started to use our cell phones and then eventually turned on the TV, only to find out that it was even worse than we had thought from the red alerts. Yeah, there was word of infiltrators, terrorists making their way across the border into southern communities. We live in the south. Ashkelon was one of the main targets. We weren't there, but our son was there with his wife and family. They wanted to celebrate the Akafot at the synagogue where I had been rabbi for almost 20 years, where he grew up, and wanted his kids to have the experience of our Kihila, Netzach Israel and Ashkelon. Um, so they got the brunt of the booms. They were in the safe room in our apartment for a good 5 or 6 hours. At one point, they lost electricity for a couple of hours, and then when there was a lull in the action, they got in the car and just scrambled back up north where they live.
Hmm.
Um, we touched base with them on WhatsApp, found out they were okay. They knew we were okay, and slowly the word was coming in of Israeli casualties. And I looked back the other day and I saw that there were reports of 22 Israeli casualties. By the end of the day, my son-in-law said it's going to get much worse. He already knew, and sure enough, you know what the numbers were.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was October 7th. We have not been home since then, except for a very brief half-hour visit in between missiles to retrieve some things that we needed. The rest of the time, we've been staying here with Yael and her family, driving up north near Netanya to visit alone and help him out and his wife out with their kids. But we really don't go anywhere else. We've stayed away. We're always waiting for the next uh, alert that missiles are coming in. We don't want to be caught unawares.
So when you go back to your apartment in Ashkelon, are your neighbors still staying there, or have they gone north, or what's going on
So,
there?
so our next door neighbor is there. She said she's not leaving. One or two of the other neighbors left for sure. Our downstairs neighbor, there are 8 families in the building. We have lovely, lovely neighbors for the last 27 years. We all moved in 28 years ago, I guess, together. And and unfortunately, their 2 sons-in-law were amongst the first victims.
Mm,
Um, we started seeing postings that the family was looking for the sons-in-law. They weren't together, they were in 2 different places. For 3 days, they had no idea where they were, and then both bodies were discovered within about 24 hours of each other. So the two daughters were sitting Shiva together, but the family decided to go north to another daughter and stay with her because they just needed to get away from the commotion, the violence, the fear. Um, it is terrifying when you hear that siren go off.
mm. You have to know where the closest safe room is at all
Right,
times. Right.
right. So we've been back almost 5 years, and during that time, we've had numerous sirens go off. And the first few times, it was terrifying for me. Before we had moved back to the States, we didn't hear sirens except during the Gulf War. That's 30 years ago.
Mhm.
So we were spared a lot of those sirens while we were away, but we've had numerous ones since we're back, and you don't get used to it. And Ashkelon in particular is feeling the brunt of things in terms of the missile attacks. As of 2 weeks ago, they had counted something like 1,500 missiles launched at Ashkelon.
Unbelievable.
Almost all of them were taken out by the Iron Dome. But when the Iron Dome is successful, it there are fragments that fall from the skies and they land on people's homes and businesses and cars, start fires. People get hurt from that. There have been very few deaths as a result of the missile attacks or from the fragments. But I don't know if you can hear that. There's a plane going overhead. We are right near an Air Force base.
Mm.
Uh,
So,
these planes are headed south right now to Gaza.
mm. So what does routine feel like? I mean, this is going to be, from all reports, kind of a long war. So what does routine feel like in Israel today?
It depends where you live. We are amongst the mifunim, the evacuees, people who are not living at home. Uh, we have families, so we're staying with our family. Others who don't have family may have gone to hotels. Those who can't afford hotels are getting some money from the government. We'll talk a little bit about the government. I don't want to harp on that too much, but there are a lot of people who have not left Ashkelon, so their routine is to wait for the next siren. We
Yeah.
have not had sirens here since that first day. We have heard sirens in nearby towns and thought they were here and scrambled to the safe room and then realized it wasn't here in this area. Uh, so we were able to leave right away. But if a siren goes off, you're supposed to stay in the safe room for at least 10, 11 minutes, no
Mm.
matter where you live, if it's in your community. In terms of routine, well, there's a family of 5 that we've been staying with. And so now we're a family of 7. As I mentioned, my son-in-law is in the Air Force, so he's not around a lot because of his rank. He has responsibilities that take him away at least every other day, if not every day. And right now he's away for a couple of days. So
Mm.
we're trying to pick up the slack. For the average Israeli child, there are schools that have reopened and preschools that have reopened, but they go for anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours a day. In some communities, every day, like my son's community up north. Here, it's every other day. We're so close still to the area that's targeted that the Ministry of Education has not yet allowed schools to reopen full time. So my two grandsons are in school Monday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday, or Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. Our 5-year-old granddaughter is in preschool just about every morning. Some days she has daycare after preschool, not every day. Um, Part of the problem is that a lot of the teachers were called up for reserve duty, the male teachers in particular, but not only the male teachers. Our daughter's next door neighbors are both called up, but they're both the husband and the wife have jobs that, although they've got, I think, 3 children between the ages of 6 and 12, they are out of the house almost every day. And with help from their parents, they're able to manage the kids. But when you don't have structure and you don't have continuity and you need to keep the kids entertained and distracted, um, the kids start to climb the walls. They start to fight with each other. The parents are refereeing and the grandparents are refereeing most of the time. So that's a good part of our routine when the kids are home. When the kids aren't home, we're doing some of the cleaning and cooking and shopping and anything that can be done to relieve some of the pressure off our daughter because her job is asked her to return to work. So she's back in her office in Tel Aviv at least once a week. She's an accountant for Deloitte, overseeing American Israel adventures, I'll call them.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to keep everybody's sanity as much as we can.
So people are working, but they're working on kind of part-time schedules, and
It's almost like COVID, except and during COVID, everybody was afraid to go out because they might get sick. Now people are afraid to get too far from home because they don't know
yeah.
when there's going to be a siren. A good friend of ours came to visit the other day, yours and mine, Rabbi Eli Chavivi,
Mhm.
had a planned vacation, so he showed up, came to see us, and we reviewed some of the rules for the app and what he should do if he's driving the car and suddenly hears a siren. And sure enough, they heard a siren on their way back to Herzliya. They heard a siren when they were in the supermarket, and that's the routine. People are going on with their lives where they can. In terms of the southern communities, they've mostly been evacuated. The survivors of the attacks have been evacuated. Uh, Although I heard my first bar mitzvah from when we came in 1986 was on the radio yesterday. He teaches communications at a college in the South, and one of the Army radio station interviewed him because he is the only person on the campus right now.
Oh my
He
God.
runs, he teaches communication and runs the radio station. And he said, I can't leave the radio station. It brings comfort to people. So he's there every day by himself running the station. Um, and he told the story of somebody in Kibbutz Alumim, which is an Orthodox kibbutz, that was discovered by his son to be watering the plants around the kibbutz. He said, Dad, what are you doing? And he said, someone's got to water the plants so that when everybody comes back, they won't find all the vegetation has died. We need some signs of hope. And
Right.
that optimistic story just had me in tears while we were driving home from our son. And this guy who is now well into his 40s, whose dad was a survivor of Mauthausen and was president of our Kehillah in Ashkelon. First of all, he'd been very proud of his son. But secondly, the fact that he thinks that he has to show up every day to play music on the radio for people says
Mhm.
something about the sense of commitment or responsibility that Israelis are feeling for each other. And if there's any good that has come out of this after close to a year of great divisiveness here, the country is largely united.
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing to see.
It is amazing, and the volunteerism that's going on around the country is just inspiring. I've been reading about people traveling south to help in the harvest.
Right.
Pictures I
Right.
never pictures I never
Foreign
thought.
workers aren't here. Palestinian workers aren't here. And people who do a lot of the vegetable and fruit picking. I can tell you a little bit about Ashkelon's volunteer community. There are a lot of English speakers and mostly retirees who have a WhatsApp group, and every day there's a call to go and man stations at the hospital. Barzilai Hospital is around the corner from us. It was hit 4 times directly by missiles. Nobody heard about that in the media, though they heard about the hospitals in Gaza that were hit by Israeli missiles. But that's only because the Hamas commanders have their headquarters beneath the hospitals. It's also where they store a lot of the food, water, and the petrol, as they say, that doesn't get to the masses. So keep saying, if you want to prevent a humanitarian disaster, get rid of Hamas. Don't
Yeah.
turn against the Israelis. But these volunteers are out there every day at the hospital. They're out there picking fruit and vegetables. They're worrying about people who can't take care of themselves. Another great example of that is my son alone, who, like many, started a grassroots initiative because unfortunately we haven't seen much of a response from the government the way we would like. So people are taking upon themselves to raise money and meet people's needs. I encourage everybody to send money to Barzilai Hospital in Ashkelon. Just found out that a young physician, uh, daughter of my former dentist in Chicago, arrived today to be a trauma surgeon at Barzilai Hospital. Daughter of Howard Blivis,
My
whose
dentist
office,
is
right?
my
He's your dentist.
it's my dentist too.
So
Yeah.
Howard's daughter, who went to Barna with my niece, I got a picture today of her arriving in Israel, and she's on her way to Ashkelon to be a trauma surgeon. So I think Chicagoans should be proud of her.
So
Uh, but my son started this grassroots effort to help out because the money that goes to the hospital or goes to other major organizations is going to sit in the banks for weeks or months, maybe even years before the tenders are issued for rebuilding or fixing up the hospital. In the meantime, we have problems with people living in public shelters because it takes too long for them to get from their homes to the shelters if they don't have the safe room where they live, and especially older people and disabled people are challenged. So they're living in the shelters. The shelters hadn't been cleaned in years. The electricity wasn't working. There were no mattresses or blankets. So I think you may have seen the pictures I put up of the mattresses arriving at a number of the shelters. And 2 days ago, I got a WhatsApp from one of our colleagues from South America, who's a rabbi up north, I believe in Haifa or near Haifa. He's now in Miluim, and he said, I'm stationed near Ashkelon. We need a refrigerator. Can anybody help us? And our colleague said, well, I'm here, I'm there. I can get it, but it takes some time. We got to find someone who'll bring it. And I wrote and said, give me 5 minutes. Called Alon. Alon said, give me his name and number. They spoke. Alon called one of the people that he's been working with to give them income with the money that he's raised. And the refrigerator was delivered yesterday to much fanfare to a group of reserve soldiers in the Ashkelon area. Gave a little bit of parnasa income to a store owner in Ashkelon, but felt really great that people who've been supporting those efforts can see tangible results immediately. And
amazing.
and this is, his story is one of many.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite stories is that the people who were managing the protests against the government had created an entire they had created an entire kind of powerful social media effort, and they turned that immediately to kind of finding the right kind of bulletproof vest for soldiers going around the country. And
Right.
so Israel as a country, the people have really pulled together. And I think that's something that I think all of us can take justifiable pride in.
Right.
But I want to turn our conversation a little bit about outside of Israel. You have a very, very interesting perspective. You grew up in America, you were educated in America, went to the seminary, but then you went to Israel and you helped build a remarkable congregation in Ashkelon. And then for some time, you came back to the United States. We were lucky enough to have you and Chana as part of our community for a number of years at Anshe Emet, then in Westchester and in other places. So you have this kind of Israeli perspective, but you also have an American perspective. So when you saw how quickly sympathies changed to anger after October 7th. You know, it was civilization versus barbarism, good and evil for us. And all of a sudden, there are calls for a ceasefire. And we see what's happening on college campuses and the chants, you know, around the world from the river to the sea and all of that. What are you seeing? What's your perspective on that? I mean, we talk about it here in America, and kind of shocked by, you know, beharif ayin, you know, that in the blink of an eye, you know, the world has changed. But tell us about your perspective as you're watching this.
So first of all, I don't think the world changed. I think the truth is surfacing, and it's a scary truth that we denied. Um, I have seen some serious arguments between colleagues and other professional Jews about uh, whether or not Jews who side with the Hamas supporters need to be driven out of the Jewish community. That goes for anybody in any position of leadership or any follower in any of those organizations, like the Jewish Voice for Peace, or what's it called, the Imlo Akshav, if not now. Um, and I see a lot of anger, and I feel that maybe this is a result of our not having done a better job educating American Jewry to love Israel as it is, instead of trying to paint a picture of what Israel wasn't. We needed to get the message out. In Israel, we're talking about the day after the war ends. What will things be like? And there are already the Messianic Jews who want to, and I don't mean the Christian Messianic Jews, I mean
Right.
some of the people that we love and call family and friends, whose beliefs take them into an area that would, uh, they want to resettle Gaza. Let me put it bluntly. They want to resettle Gaza. The smoke hasn't settled yet, but um, I'm hoping that that will not happen. Having already sat through that movie once, I'm not ready to sit through it again and pay the price for that. But um, there are there. I think if we're talking about what's going to happen the day after the war ends in America, there's a need to talk about what's going on now.
Mhm.
How are how is the Jewish community in America and elsewhere, not in Europe and every place around the world, responding to this anti-Semitism that is just not ashamed of rearing its ugly head and showing its true teeth? It's been there forever. I don't think it ever went away. We've just let the devil out of the box.
Yeah,
And when
it's
I talk to people about this, I say two things. Number one, I think instead of arguing on Facebook or throwing out slogans like Am Yisrael Chai or Together We're Going to Win, that's not how we're going to win the war in Israel or in the States. But I think there has to be a serious campaign to instill enough pride in individual Jews that the one thing I hear most of all won't happen, which is keep your head down, don't ask for trouble, don't advertise your Jewishness, don't walk around with a kippah, don't speak Hebrew, don't go to kosher restaurants, don't go to synagogues, don't go to day schools, because these places aren't safe. There's a real palpable fear that we're reading about here, but I understand it from our time in the States. And when I tell people that this is something that can be addressed, I actually cite you as a model. Because I remember when you led a campaign with one of the newspapers in Chicago, right? You were there, and until they met with you and agreed to maybe change their perspective on Israel, um, you had to be dogged. You had to keep doing it every day. And I think that American Jews can do something that we can't do. In Israel, we're not allowed to see the graphic photos of what happened on October 7th. They're not allowed to be shown. Somebody actually sent me one.
Mhm.
I won't describe it. It was horrible. I can't forget it. But the other day, our foreign ministry finally did something they should have done weeks ago, which was call together all the foreign journalists and show them a 47-minute film of these photos, of these scenes of what was actually perpetrated by the Hamas. And they're not militants, and they're not fighters, they're not freedom fighters, and they're not a resistance. They're butchers who planned this attack meticulously for such a long time that they were able to kill 1,400 people in a matter of hours and destroy so many lives. And nobody knew the extent of it until we heard the stories that they were hepped up on drugs and they were promised $10,000 for every Israeli they brought back into captivity. We need now to show everybody in America what really happened. You can show those pictures to every newspaper publisher, every university president, every church and mosque in America has to see it so that you can undo the damage of not the Palestinian narrative, but the Hamas narrative, and they're not identical.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is to walk proudly in the streets as Jews and be able to gather your kids together and your families together and say, we are not going to go into hiding. We
Yeah.
did that once before.
Right.
Now we need to walk proudly as Jews because,
yeah,
go ahead.
I want to say that our experience at Anshe Emet has not been that people have stayed away, and nor
Anshe Emet is a unique community.
well, maybe I think it is, and we've been around for 150 years, so I think we must be doing something right. But that hasn't been our experience. But and the day school experience has, in fact, the Bernard Zell Anshe Emet Day School is taking kids in who are coming from Israel right now, families who are relocating, maybe temporarily or permanently. We don't know that, but they're going to be become part of the synagogue, part of the Anshe Emet Bernard Zell community. So I think we are doing that. But what I want to say is that there are things that are different right now. There has not been, nor do I foresee, a pro-Israel outdoor rally in Chicago. And the reason for that there has not been, one is because the forces, let's call them the pro-Hamas forces, who call themselves pro-Palestinian, will swamp that group. And I don't think police can protect people from that, so that the rally, in fact, we have a rally tonight. The Jewish United Federation is sponsoring a rally, and there are some families who are coming from the south of Israel who have family members who are hostages. We're going to welcome them, and if the community is coming together, I'm sure there'll be at least 1,000 people tonight. But it's indoors. It's indoors, and that's the hardest thing of all. That is that the tension is great, and we have to be outspoken, as you said, but also we need to take care as well. We spend time now talking to kids on college campuses. We're talking to parents. Tomorrow night, we have an evening with parents, and then we have high school kids who are going through a lot. We are on the front lines, but I got to tell you, it is really, really challenging. Our kids feel isolated. They feel hurt, angry. They're scared. And it's not without cost. It's just
no. Listen, we have a friend who's the head of the board of the JCC in the Upper West Side of New York, who just sent a beautiful letter to the community, sent us a copy, and he described his nephew at Tulane getting beaten up there. We see what's going on at Cornell, Columbia. Saw the demonstration at Grand Central Station. We saw Russians attacking a plane from Israel, looking for Israelis. So the fear is legitimate. It's real. The question is, what's the response?
Right.
And we have a lot of people fighting for Israel on Facebook, but that's not going to change anybody's opinion, right? The people who are pro-Hamas are not going to change their opinions because of something that they saw on Facebook. And the editorials, some written by good friends. Yossi Klein Halevi from Hartman has been writing important pieces. But the people who read Yossi Klein Halevi are not going to change even and though Yossi has entree into the Muslim world of America.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to change the minds of the Hamas supporters because they're not going to read him. They're not interested in reading anything. They're not interested in dialoguing. They've made up their minds that Israel is the monster. So
I think part of our battle is really to make sure that that the Jewish community remains united right now. There has
so
been
I don't know how you're going to do that because I remember my days in Chicago and there was a strong element of support for not for Hamas, but for the Palestinian narrative.
Yeah.
Amongst Jews, not just amongst our neighbors.
No, it is challenging. We're to show you just how challenging it is. I know one of the rabbis at Anshiamet, Rabbi Chaikin Gould, is working with a social worker to have a night to prepare for Thanksgiving, when kids are coming home to be with parents and the parents are concerned about the dialogue about Israel around the table.
Great idea.
But yes, but the fact that we're creating this speaks volumes about what you were saying a moment ago. It is that we are at we're at a really crucial moment. I wanna just end our conversation, or at least this part of the conversation. I hope, God willing, we'll have many more. What
now,
are your
hopefully we won't have too many more when the war will end soon, but
God willing? But
yeah, it's not looking like that right now.
no, it doesn't. But what are your final thoughts for us today? And what's your prayer at this moment in time?
I wrote something for the Times of Israel a few weeks ago
Mhm.
when people start talking about praying for peace. We need to pray for peace. And others began talking about a ceasefire. And I could not identify with that. In fact, I found it hard in my own davening to say any prayer that was asking for peace and understanding between us and others because I felt really broken.
Mm.
And one thing I agree with that Netanyahu has said, and I'm not a big Netanyahu supporter, is that we cannot talk about a ceasefire, not because it gives Hamas a victory, but it means we will not uproot the cancer that is infecting the world. And we've danced this dance before, and we never thought it would come back in such a savage way to destroy so many here in Israel. And I feel very badly for Palestinian civilians who were not able to get out of the way. And I know that most of them are helpless against Hamas, so they couldn't object to tunnels being built beneath their homes or beneath their hospitals and schools and mosques. But I also know that the thousands of Hamas soldiers and butchers were talking about this, I assume, for a long time. And so a lot of families knew what was about to happen. And there have been very few voices, if any, from Gaza that have said, we are so sorry for what happened to the 1,400 Israelis and others who were butchered. We hear people saying, let the Red Cross in and take care of the humanitarian problem in Gaza. We're still waiting for the Red Cross to meet with the captives so we can get an exact accounting of who's in captivity, who's alive. The fact that it took so many days to identify bodies here so that people knew that their loved ones were actually not in captivity but had been murdered, that was an agonizing process.
Hmm.
One of my oldest friends from Ramah, Canada, a friend of over 50 years, wrote to me in the middle of the night, we don't know where our daughter is, mother of 2 little kids. She's been gone, no trace. We don't know if she's a captive. We don't know if she's alive or dead. And then the next day she wrote and said they found the body. It was beneath the bed in the safe room of her house on a kibbutz near the border. And after she was killed, they put the body there and hid it and booby trapped the room. So when her father and husband came to retrieve the body, they almost got killed. There's just horror story after horror story, and it's all personal because everybody knows somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking for an end to humanitarian crisis. It's a twofold crisis. First of all, because of what happened to Israelis here. That's what speaks to me most. And I feel badly for the civilians in Gaza. But we pulled out of there almost 20 years ago so that we could live in peace side by side. And while the UN is condemning Israel for not providing water and food and gasoline and whatever, it's all there underground.
Yeah.
Hamas has it. And there was a citation from a Russian journalist today. I'm assuming it's true. I don't know. It might be apocryphal. But he was given a tour 200 feet down below the surface of what they're calling the Hamas Metro, the tunnel system that extends for hundreds of miles, and saw the food and water and the gasoline. Said, "Why aren't you sharing this with the civilians?" And they say, "Our job is to take care of Hamas. It's the UN's job to take care of the civilians."
Mm.
When you have an enemy like that who is determined to destroy you, you cannot say, we're going to have a ceasefire, because it means if not next year, then in 5 years or 10 years, we're going to have another disaster. We're going to have another catastrophe. And until Hamas is no longer a relevant factor in the equation of the Middle East, Israel cannot take the chance of suffering so many deaths again, like it has. There are a lot of cliches about the fact that nothing like this has happened since the Holocaust. It's not the Holocaust, but Israel has a mandate to protect its citizens, Jews and non-Jews.
Yep.
And there are a lot of non-Jews, there are a lot of Muslims, Bedouins, and others who are hurt or killed during this rampage. And we're united now. We're
Yeah.
absolutely united.
Well, our hope and prayer is that American Jewry will be united with Israeli Jewry, and that together we will stand strong and we'll see a better day.
American Jewry needs to know the real narrative. It's
Yeah.
not about the history of Arabs and Jews in the land of Israel. It's about Hamas and what it does to human beings, Palestinians, Jews, everybody else. Hamas, we would not have ended World War II if if Europe had continued with a policy of appeasement. We could not have stopped the Holocaust if the United States hadn't bombed Dresden. We would not have ended the war in the Pacific without atomic bombs. There are great regrets about all the things that happened, but the citizens of those countries didn't stop their leaders. And so that didn't mean that the rest of the world had to stand by and accept the fact that they had a responsibility for the welfare of those citizens of Germany and Japan or elsewhere. Italy was right out of the picture by the end, but neither can Israel stand back and say, let's sign a ceasefire. Let's give them everything they're asking for so we can be considered good guys. We're not good guys. We are in pain and we're hurting.
Right. I also want to say that there are those in the Netanyahu government who have been part of that history of appeasement with Hamas. And we need to acknowledge that and the reality that we're going to have to figure out we're going to have to work with Palestinians to find a better path. I don't know what that path is, and I'm not suggesting what it is, but there has to be a better path.
Look, when this is over, there will be a comeuppance for the government that wasn't prepared, that let its people down, let its citizens down. There are calls for unity coming from all my friends who were supporters of the government. One said to me, just watch Channel 14, which is our equivalent of Fox News. It's a TV station that was created by the Netanyahu government to give voice to their policies, feeling that they were not represented properly on the other TV stations. And every time I turn on Channel 14, I hear them condemning a government that existed for less than a year and a half as if they were responsible, or telling us that everybody else is responsible except for the prime minister. And the prime minister himself the other day tweeted out an attack against some of his security leaders, people he appointed. So we're trying to demonstrate unity. I think that at the grassroots level, it's happening. No one's asking whether or not you are for or against the judicial overhaul anymore. It's just let's get through this together. And the
Um,
politicians will continue to ruin this country because they're very selfish, self-centered people who, from the government right now, I mean, we see it every day. The families of the captives um, are saying nobody has reached out to us to tell us what to do or what's happening. The families of the those who were killed, even soldiers, are complaining that the government had not allowed its representatives to come to funerals, probably terrified that they would be attacked. But there's never been a time where victims of terror did not bury their loved ones um, without somebody from the government present to say how sorry we are and we're here to hold your hands. So when it's all over, we'll deal with that. In the meantime, despite the government, we have faith in the army, we have faith in our people, and I think that will get us through the war. We need to have faith in the American Jewish community. The American Jewish community needs to have faith in the Israeli Jewish community that we are on the right side of history. That the narrative that is being shared by the enablers of Hamas murderers and butchers is a narrative of lies, and that we need you to get the real narrative out there. And do it at the high school level, do it at the college level, and please don't be afraid.
Amen to that. I think our Torah reading speaks to us. I think we're going through a different Akedah in
Yeah,
this time, but the phrase "Vayalchu shnehem yachdav" speaks to us in this moment.
absolutely.
So to that we can say Amen. Rabbi Futterman and Matt, it's a pleasure to see you, to hear your voice, to learn from you today, and just know that we wish you chizuk and strength, and your family should, be safe, and that Israel should, come to a better day soon. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Michael. Thank you to everybody at Anshemet and in Chicago. Keep praying for us. Keep supporting us.
God
Thank
will
you.
continue.
See you in better days.
Amen. Thank you, Tyler. I'm going to stop here.